So welcome back everybody. As you've probably seen, EcoFlow just launched a whole host of new products, and I happen to have a couple of models here, including one that I am super excited about and is probably going to make the most sense for you watching. So today we're going to be going over the new Delta 3 power stations here. I have the Delta 3 Max and the Delta 3 Max Plus. Now there's some pretty significant differences between the two, so I thought it'd be best to put them both in one single video, go over that, and it should answer your questions, because as you quickly scroll across the website, you may not see the differences, and I'm telling you, there's some big ones. And let's talk about some of the differences here. So for reference, this is the Delta 3 Max on the left-hand side, and this right here is the Delta 3 Max Plus. The Plus designation just tells you there's a lot more features to this particular unit. Both units are 2,048 watt hours of capacity. However, the Plus right here, as you can see on top, it can take an expansion battery. Actually, it can take several expansion batteries and even will work with the smart generator. Don't worry, we're going to show and test all that. Whereas the Delta 3 Max on the left-hand side is a dedicated unit only with no expansion options. Obviously, this is going to be your more affordable unit as a result. Now, the Delta 3 Max over here has 4 ports on the front that all work in conjunction for a total of 2,400 watts output continuous, up to 3,400 watts if you use their X-Boost technology. So moving over here to the Delta 3 Max Plus, well, guess what? Your output is increased, and there's something very special going on with these outlets right here. You'll notice 2 different buttons up top. We now have 3,000 watts of continuous output, up to 3,800 watts with X-Boost. And here's something that they are doing with this particular model. This is one of those aha moments. Why has nobody ever thought of this before? These are independently controlled outlets right here, and you have 2 different AC off and on. By the way, you can independently control these outlets via an app as well, whether you're around the unit or not. Why is that important? Well, that's because the majority of people that are buying these are for power outages, whether it be hurricanes, brownouts, whatever it is that you're constantly dealing with. And one of the most common things that people plug into units like this is food, refrigerators or freezers. That's what you're trying to save. Both of these have enough power to start up any standard freezer or refrigerator, but let's face it, these are battery devices. Unless you start getting into the smart one here where you can have smart generators kicking on or battery expansion, eventually these will die. Say you've powered up your home and evacuated, or you have this running freezers and refrigerators at a vacation home or a hunting or fishing camp, things such as that. You can put an important device, like say a freezer or refrigerator, on one side of these ports. You can dedicate that port as a priority port, and then on the other side, maybe that's got your internet, some fans, charging random things. And you can actually set, whenever this unit starts getting lower, you can prioritize one set of ports to actually cut off for non-essential devices to save the remaining battery power in here and dedicate it to the prioritized port for that freezer and refrigerator. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant idea. And again, if you happen to have internet where this is at, you can get on via the app, cut that off, or if you're around in the room, you can do it via Bluetooth as well. All right, for reference, this is the Delta 3 Max. There's the Max Plus. So if we flip down these doors, by the way, I really like the EcoFlow is now doing the kind of hidden door feature. That's something they've always done on their larger models, and I like how they get out of the way. Now here's where we can tell a huge difference between the two. Again, kind of just a dedicated style unit. This right here has all the expandability options, something I am very, very excited about. So just on the Delta 3 Max, you have AC input. You can do up to 1,800 watts from any standard wall outlet. That is fully adjustable by flipping the switch and going into the app. You can go anywhere from as low of power as you want up to the 1,800 watts. You have one dedicated solar charging input right here, 500 watts, 11 to 60 volts, 18 amps max. That's also something new. Typically in the past, it's been around 15 amps now, up to 18 amps of input. And then you have one dedicated, most likely 10 amp, 12 volt cigarette style output right here. Relatively basic stuff. Now let's look at the increases and what you get for upgrading to the Max Plus. Again, same AC input, charging switch so you can designate the amount of input power, but look at here, now we have 2 solar input charging ports. We can go up to 1,000 watts of charging over here, both 11 to 60 volts, 18 amps. 1,000 watts of charging on a unit this size is pretty awesome. And as you can see, we have a whole nother host of hookups down here. This is where things are really, really exciting. So if we take a look at this port right here, there is a lot of things that you can do here. This is your extended battery port. And by the way, I should mention, you can expand this unit up to 10,000 watt hours of capacity. That is a huge amount of expansion for a unit this size. I happen to have one of the extra batteries that you can do right here, and it came with a cable to connect from right here on this port to this port. And I just read and seen that they are offering an adapter, so if you want to add more than one battery, there is an expansion adapter that will allow you to add up to 2 batteries. I don't have that on hand to show you, but know that that is possible. Now you're probably wondering, how do you get up to 10,000 watt hours of capacity? It just so happens this unit is backwards compatible with older units batteries like say Delta 2 Max. It's also compatible with say Delta Pro 3 batteries, which are much larger than these styles, or you can buy the matched up dedicated Delta 3 series batteries. So think about that. You can put a huge Delta 3 Pro battery. You can build this system however you want. And maybe you're like me, you already own a Delta 3 Pro or other style units, including older ones. There is some compatibility here. I should also mention this is the plug that you'll need if you want to hook this up with the smart generator. By the way, you can charge up to 2,600 watts from an SG4000 EcoFlow smart generator. We're going to talk about that more in a minute because that is an amazing feature. It's truly smart. But if you want to add an older style battery that uses this style port, it's available. This is where things are getting exciting. Now they've also upgraded the Max Plus to a 30 amp Anderson 12 volt port right here. So for all of you that are van camping, have overland camping, that's starting to become so popular, truck camping, and you're looking for a unit that you can power up, say a 12 volt distribution center, you've got 30 amps of 12 volt output right here. That's a huge increase from your typical cigarette lighter plug. So now, if you've got one of those style vehicle setups, you can power it up from this unit. They've really thought this unit through. And for those of you that are curious, yes, the batteries are stackable. It locks in up top. It's got some rubber feet so it can't slide off, and you could stack yet another battery up there. It is rated for weight and for stacking. All right, so if we take a look in the app, I was able to find the unit very quickly, and we get a whole host of information here. But something we're about to test and try is this smart generator function. That is not talked about enough, and I love that feature. And I'm excited to see when I went in here. Again, we can adjust when the unit kicks off and on, percentages, brightnesses. You can hook it up to the internet. You can change charging speeds, just all kinds of stuff. You can turn your X boost off and on. I am happy to see this has output port memory. So that means if this unit were to die, say at your cabin and you're not there, and then sun comes up the next day, starts solar charging it. I love that they've added this feature. It'll actually turn itself back on and turn on the ports that were on beforehand. That way you don't have to drive back out there or risk losing food. It'll go back to the state that it was before the battery died. Here's that AC output protection where you can pick which ports you want off and on the Delta 3 Max Plus, and a whole host of other information. But let's go back to the smart generator auto start and stop. Here's something I just discovered, and I love that they're doing this. I thought this was only compatible with the SG4000, their larger smart generator. But if you clicked on AC input port up here, you can change it to AC input port where it'll charge up to 1800 watts on the wall input port. But that also communicates with the Smart Generator 3000, the smaller generator, if that's something you may be interested in. It charges via AC input. So you can select this to work with that generator, or you can do the extra battery port like I showed you with that adapter, and this will work with the SG4000 generator. Okay, so here's the SG4000, EcoFlow's largest smart generator, and it actually charges via DC output port right here to that adapter that I showed y'all earlier, going right into the back side of the unit. What I need to verify is if we use an expansion battery and their expansion hub, which I do not have by the way, can we actually do an extra battery, and can we also charge via the generator? I'll try to get that and drop a comment after this video post. Now you've already seen in the app I set up when this hits 30%, which is where it's at now, it'll automatically tell this unit to turn on. Let me turn that feature back on. All right, feature is turned on. Let's see what happens. Oh. How cool is that? All automatic. They both talk to each other and do whatever parameters you set. We'll turn off eco mode and let's do max charging. Puts charging at 1000 watts. Let me go in the app and adjust that up. All right, you can hear it ramping up. .2600 watts made it up to. All right, since I know people are going to be very curious about this, it's one of the more exciting features of these units. I've got the Delta 3 Max Plus now hooked up to the smaller SG3000 generator. And you can see this charges a different way. This generator does not have DC port output. It's got AC ports on the front. That one does too, by the way. But this one communicates to this unit via Bluetooth instead of through the DC cable, which also has data in it as well, a data cable. So much smaller unit, a little quieter, a little more compact. This probably is the unit a lot of you will go with something like this. Now you can run a standard extension cord too to hook this up, so you could have this unit way outside of the home. That is a benefit to that particular unit. So I've already got these set up in the app to communicate with each other, set my charging limits, and then all I've got to do is go in the app now and just turn on the communication, the smart generator auto start and stop. All right, turn it on. Let's see if it tells it to fire up, because we're below 30% over here. Just tried to start. There we go. Let's see if it starts charging. And we're off to the races. That is so cool. I am not anti-generator at all. Actually, I love generators. So being able to pair up a smart device like that with a pretty powerful battery device is a win-win scenario for me, especially if you're not around and can't maintain and monitor this stuff. You can do it via the app. Now, it's also worth noting one excellent thing these are used for is UPSs, uninterrupted power supplies. I actually run a smaller unit of one of these 24/7, 365 on some of my most important equipment, including my computers, and they're fantastic for security systems and internet as well. So what that means is you can plug one of these units into the wall, plug something into the front side, and the wall power goes straight through this once this is fully charged. In the event you lose wall power, the hurricane hits, anything goes down, this has a 10 millisecond switch on the inside, automatically swaps over to battery power, and whatever's plugged in on the front, again, the internet, medical equipment, things such as that, never loses power because this swaps so quick. All right, we've already did so many tests over the years, y'all have seen it. I already know these units are not gonna have an issue running freezers, refrigerators, medical equipment, fans, security, whatever you could think that you would want to plug in on these. The most powerful 120 volt device that I have happens to be this beast of a steel cutting saw right here. The initial surge and startup pulls thousands of watts of power, and I'm curious if it's going to trip these units out. Then once it's running, it still pulls a ton of power. Being this is the most powerful thing I have, these technically should run it, although I've had issues in the past with bigger units than this, running saws like that. Let's see. So if it'll run that, well, you know, anything below that, which is just about anything you could dream up 120 volt wise, should run no problem. So you can see the cable is run right across and plugged in. Let's see if we trip the unit. Interesting. All right, I'm gonna give you all a first-hand look at the screen. Let's see if we can briefly catch the surge and power usage. All right, just under 2,000 watts on the initial startup, but the surge is so fast, my gut feeling is we're not seeing the true spike, but we ran it. All right, more powerful Delta 3 Max Plus. This certainly shouldn't have a problem starting this saw. Let's take a look on the screen with it. Now, as you can see right there, we didn't catch the full surge because it's so fast, this just doesn't calculate it that quick, but that doesn't matter. What I wanted to see was these could run the most powerful 120 volt device that I have, and they did it without issue. I'm actually shocked they did not trip out or throw any sort of error code. Obviously, again, the electronics, the medical equipment, the household items, which is what the majority of people are buying these for camping, any of those appliances, just not gonna be a problem at all. So at the end of the day, the clear winner for me is the Delta 3 Max Plus. I just love all the extra solar charging, the power. I love the dedicated ports that you can actually prioritize. That's such smart thinking. I'm always a huge fan of expandability, adding more batteries because, well, in the event of an outage, I would much rather have more power than less power. And probably the biggest selling point for me is these are compatible with both smart generators. Fantastic. All right, thank y'all for watching. EcoFlow's constantly reinventing the wheel, so to speak. They just had a massive launch of a lot of new products. I'm sure you're seeing that across the internet. These were the ones that had me the most excited. Normally I do the bigger units, but this one right here, as soon as I started reading the specs, I was like, this is definitely the one that I want to get my hands on, test out. All right, y'all, I'll have some links and discount codes down in the description. Full disclosure, yes, I am an EcoFlow affiliate. They sent me these out to test and make this content. And if you use my links, it does earn me a small commission, but you actually save money using my discount codes. So I highly suggest you check those out down in the description. Thank y'all for watching. We've got some more cool tests and products coming up here in the future that I'm excited to share with you. Catch you on the next one.